Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Master the Margin, our first Innovator Series. We are starting something new with this Innovator Series. We're going to start taking some important subject matters and bringing in some people, some clients from our firm that have been very successful in the different areas of the topics that we'll be talking about. Today, we're going to be talking about startups. So I'm sure everyone out there listening is either considered purchasing a store or doing one from the ground up, and you may be on the fence about that. But today we're going to talk with two successful clients of ours, of pharmacies that have built their pharmacies from the ground up and have been very successful in that process. So we're going to have Jarrod Tippins with us. He is from the pharmacy from Florence, South Carolina. And we also have Jennifer Baker from West Knox Pharmacy in Kentucky. And so they're going to, in just a second, I'm going to give you a quick intro on how they got started and what they're doing. And we also have Megan Perry with us from Sykes & Company. She's a CPA with our firm that works with startups and transitions and anything in between. So Jennifer, we'll let you go ahead and give a quick intro, and Jarrod, you can do that after her.
Okay, my name is Jennifer Baker. I own West Knox Pharmacy in Corbin, Kentucky. I have been open just a little over 4 years. I got started, I was a pharmacy manager at Kmart, just about a quarter of a mile from here, and I worked there for about 5.5 years. And unfortunately, at the time, they did not give me any help, but they did. But I did build a lot of great relationships with the patients, so I decided to start mine. There was nothing to purchase, so started mine from ground up, and here we are 4 years later.
Thank you.
Jarrod?
Good afternoon. I'm Jarrod Tippins, and I own B Pharmacy and co-owner of Moss Compounding Pharmacy in Florence, South Carolina. I graduated the University of South Carolina in 2009, and I went to work for a chain. My whole life, I've worked for independents since I was 15 years old. And in 2009, they didn't have an opportunity for a pharmacist at that location. So therefore, I went to work for CVS Pharmacy. And at that location, I became kind of the fix-it guy. So I went all over the district and I fixed those stores that were in the bottom quadrant of the metrics that they choose to measure. And essentially, after 3 years, kind of got tired of that and went back to the pharmacy that I started working at when I was 15 years old and became a pharmacist there. At that point, I was contemplating or starting a junior partnership and quickly realized that I'm not a partnership type person. So therefore, I moved to Florence and built the pharmacy on the corner of Hoffmeyer and Beltline here in Florence, South Carolina.
Good. So we want to do a quick poll question. If we want this to be really interactive, we want these Innovator Series to be very laid back. Shoot your questions in the question box if you have anything you want to ask Jarrod or Jennifer. And the first thing we wanted to see, so if you can see this poll question, where are you in the startup process? So are you just trying to decide between a purchase or a startup? Are you almost ready to open your startup, or are you already open and you're just trying to get some information? So we'll let this, we'll launch this and let you guys do that for just a second. So it looks like as it's coming in, looks like we got about 50% of our pollers deciding between a purchase or a startup at the moment, and about 25 and 25, some already open and some are almost ready to open. So that's interesting. So we got a little bit from every group, but it looks like a lot of you are still trying to decide. So Megan, you can go ahead with the first question.
Well, with that, Jarrod, do you want to tell us a little bit about what helped make your decision on whether you wanted to do a startup or a purchase?
Sure. So nothing was available for a purchase in my area at the time, but as I thought through the process, I would think purchasing versus opening a store from scratch. And there's a couple advantageous opportunities from opening a store from scratch compared to buying a store. So if you buy a store, obviously you have cash flow going, you have prescriptions in the building, and that revenue has started. And so that's a plus. And a couple of negatives with buying a location that already exists is you have old fixtures, you have old habits, employees that's been there for a long time that have connectivity with those patients, and maybe they don't run processes like you might would like for your drugstore to run. So you have all those hurdles that you have to jump over. And in my mindset, I wanted to create something exciting in my community and build something from ground up, get people talking, make a new building come up in town and make people wonder what it's going to be for a while, such as a teaser. And then the word spreads. Oh, that's going to be a pharmacy over on the corner. Oh, Jarrod Tippins is opening that pharmacy on the corner of Hoffmeyer and Beltline. And many people thought it was a restaurant, or they couldn't tell what it was going to be. So that was interesting to kind of hear those sound waves go through town. Also, when you build a store, it's fresh, it's clean, it's brand new. You can design your workflow. And in this day and time, with margins where they are, I think it's very important that you really map out your workflow. One thing I learned from CVS is that if they can take 7,500 stores and make them work, they have their workflow down. So I kind of just copied their workflow. I would measure out different stores that I would go to and compare and contrast on what would work best for me. And so that's just a few things that, the difference between startup and buying something that already exists. So that's a preference for yourself. I knew that I had it within myself to go out into the community, get involved, become engaged with the people, and get them to the store. Some people might not have that characteristic, and the cash flow and having the prescriptions already there, although that they're a great practitioner, might not have great connectivity with people. So that's something to kind of think about. If you feel like you can engage people and get them in the store, pharmacies, kind of like banks, people don't change pharmacies and banks that often, but if you can ever get them in your setting and treat them well and take care of them, they stay forever.
Yep.
Right.
And I would echo that, Jarrod. I've seen that with you, working with you over the last few years. Jarrod is definitely out in the community. He's bringing in those clients. He's making relationships. He knows people, and I think that's especially very important when you're looking at a startup. You have to have that kind of the ability to do that. If you're someone who doesn't want to socialize and get out there in front of people, it may not be for you. And a more established pharmacy might make more sense. But you definitely have to get out there and know the people, know the community, and get involved.
Right. And Jennifer, I think your experience is similar to Jarrod's. Am I right?
Yes, it is. I actually do a lot with the community, and I know it takes a lot of time to get out and get away from the pharmacy and do something. But before the COVID thing happened, I would go out once a month. It would maybe for an hour to the local senior citizen center. I would go to the assisted living facilities, and I would put together just a little goodie bag from the pharmacy with an ink pen and some different things. And I would do a one-page presentation to the senior citizens on just maybe a disease state or a drug class, and make it very simple for them. And they may not switch at the moment, but they absolutely keep you in mind. After the class, I would roam around, talk with them, answer any questions that they have. So they just kind of saw me as a friend, as a family member, and like we were talking earlier, I think it's just huge to be a part of the community, to become a part of any committees that's available, especially to do with the elderly. If you have a patient that passes away, absolutely, I always go to the funeral home. It may just take 30 minutes, and I know we don't have the time to do that, but it goes so far with the family. If you just, buy several sympathy cards off of Amazon, and when someone passes away, just have everyone in the pharmacy sign it and hand it to the family. you're part of the family at that point. And so the rest of the family, they're always going to be with you. So if you can just take that little bit of extra time to spend in the community, it is huge.
Yep. And I think, Jarrod, you even went as far as to sign up for a dance competition last year for a fundraiser in your community, right?
To echo what Jennifer said, I'm very involved in my community. I'm on several different boards, whether it be from Florence County Disabilities and Special Needs Board to Rotary to BNI. They wrote me into dance, and I don't look like a dancer, I know. But anyway, it's basically raising money for Florence School District 1. And so anything I can do to be impactful and increase the quality of life of people in my community, that's what we set out to do when I built the pharmacy. Impact lives, make a difference in people's lives. I think if you kind of keep that in your mindset, that you will be successful.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so now that we know kind of why both of you went into starting up a pharmacy, once you made that decision, what are things that you did to prepare for the startup process?
I had actually go ahead, Jarrod.
Okay. So for me, I had the opportunity to work in an independent pharmacy before and also a chain pharmacy. So I would take knowledge from both of those. And before I opened my store, I went to several trade shows like McKesson Trade Show, different wholesaler trade shows, NCPA, Ownership Workshop, things of that nature, and started just obtaining as much knowledge as possible. A thing that was key for me is I would think about everything that I did at CVS and everything that I did at the other independent pharmacy that I was at. And I would take those opportunities and I created a notebook. And so that notebook had sections in it. So everything down to a phone, computer system, alarm system, floor type, ceiling type. I knew I was going to build a building. So I wanted to have everything in that notebook. So I had every option available. Then I started doing research on each product, and I would call people around and ask them, in different states or that I'd met at wholesale conventions, why do you use this product? What makes this product better than the other product? So I would compare and contrast the products. And so basically I had 3-inch binders full of information. I really did my research and started making wise decisions on why I would use those products. So that's kind of how I started and kind of paving the road to getting started.
And what about you, Jennifer?
I absolutely recommend the NCPA Ownership Workshop to anyone that is thinking about starting their own pharmacy. I actually went to it twice. And the second time I took my husband, although he's not a pharmacist, he's business minded. And so it was great for both of us to go to hear all the different ideas. And I can just say that workshop was huge in getting me going. I used it to totally lay out my business plan to take to all the banks locally. And I couldn't have done it without the ownership workshop, to be honest, I think. So I thought that was huge. And then just like Jarrod said, just investigating everything possible. My husband and I would go out and we would look up independent pharmacies online, and we would go in and roam around and check it out. Say we're looking for some random vitamin or something, just to see the layout, to see what they had, to see what looked like was doing well. And we learned so much by going into different places and scoping it out and learning, kind of what our competition would be, not necessarily locally, but further on, further in this state or out in other states. So.
And I want to echo what you said, Jennifer, about the NCPA workshop. We're coming off fresh of that this past weekend. We did our first virtual NCPA ownership workshop that went really well, and I'm sure we have some people attending today that were on that virtual conference as well. But it's a great place to have lots of discussions regarding financial scenarios, how you're going to finance your pharmacy, location analysis, marketing, accounting, regulatory areas. So it really covers all those areas. It's out there for startups, for transitions, for anyone just considering, doing something different on their own. And they do not have a set firm date yet for January, but I was told by some of the organizers of the event that they are looking at a January date for a possible another the next, probably it's going to be another virtual conference. So everybody kind of keep that in mind as well moving forward. That if you're not already open, or even if you already are, you're thinking about purchasing another store or startup, transition to look into that event.
Right. And Jennifer, just to touch back on something you said, you mentioned about visiting your local banks. Could you tell us a little bit more about your basically your team behind the startup, the bank, who you had on your side as far as attorneys, et cetera?
Yes, actually, once I got my business plan together, I went to every single bank that I could find locally and presented the business plan, spoke with them about it. All of them except for one would not do a construction building ground up. So we went with that one. Thankfully it was not an SBA loan. But as far as the construction, they were very, very particular about how everything went. Thankfully, we actually did not hire an actual contractor. My husband and my dad and my uncle, they all just kind of oversaw everything. And so it kind of made it a little bit worse with the bank because they wanted to know exactly where this was going, exactly where that was going. But thankfully, we used that bank until we finished construction. And then they were only going to give us, I think it was $75,000 for operating costs. And we knew that there was no way possible. So once we got everything built, we switched over to another local bank, and they gave us $200,000, thankfully. And so it went from there. But yes, I was able to go with the local bank, and I was just looking, our interest rate is at 4.125, I believe.
Okay. And Jarrod, what about you? Did you finance your startup, and how did you go through that process?
Yes, I did use financing, and basically I did the same thing. I went to every bank, and they pretty much laughed at me because I was 30 years old, and they're like, this guy, I don't know about letting him borrow that much money at 30 years old. So obviously when I went to those conventions, I saw Live Oak Bank, they set up booths there. And so I got to know Jimmy Neal really well over at Live Oak Bank. And we began to discuss my dream and my vision. And, I kept seeing him at these conventions, and we just kept forming that relationship. So obviously I didn't tell him that the other banks had said no, but I needed some financing. So I used Live Oak Bank in Wilmington, North Carolina, and they were great to work with. They kind of held my hand through the process. They dot every I, cross every T. Although the fees, are kind of higher with an SBA position, that's the route that I had to go to be able to build this dream that I wanted. So I probably, compared to most startups, I probably spent a pretty good amount of money because I like things to look great, and I wanted to make sure that my store was aesthetically pleasing and it had the best of everything. And so they funded my dream. So I had to go to Wilmington, and they had a boardroom. It's very kind of intimidating. They wanted to ask me all these questions, and they had this room full of people. And anyway, they kind of conversed, and they called me back after I left Wilmington. It was like, you got the eye of the tiger. And I was like, what? And they're like, you have the eye of the tiger. It's kind of like that song. And so I guess I presented myself well enough for them to believe that my dream would work, and that my relationships in the community and what I could do to bring in business would be successful. And so now they call me a unicorn. I don't know what that means, but anyway, we'll take it as a compliment for sure.
Yeah.
But they were great to work with. The only thing is the fees. I kind of regret the fees, but no one else would give me the American dream that I wanted. So I applaud them for giving me the opportunity and believing in me. and working with me and making sure that everyone that was building the building, from foundation architects to structural contractors, that they followed guidelines and that they were prompt and they wouldn't get payment until the job was complete, and they sent out an inspector to take pictures and really investigated that they were doing a good job. So I was impressed with that side as well.
Yep. And I would say, Jennifer, it sounds like you had a pretty decent situation with your local bank, but that's not always the case. We know, I work with a lot of startups who struggle many times with local banks that don't truly understand the pharmacy industry. So I would say, to anyone thinking about it, I'm not trying to shoot down a local bank scenario, because we have seen them work and be, work out great. But pharmacist banks, they do truly understand the pharmacy industries. They're going to make sure that you are funded like you need to be for that working capital that you're going to need in those first year or two, especially with a startup, because you really don't know, if the people are going to walk in the door or not from the beginning. So if you have to go and ask for more money to your local bank after 6 months or a year, you're going to struggle with that. But having a bank that understands the industry behind you, that may be an easier scenario to go through with a pharmacy niche bank for sure. Jarrod, you also, because you built your store from the ground up, you also took advantage of a cost segregation study, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I did. So I'll let you elaborate on that, Bonnie, because you guys held my hand through that process, and I'd never heard of a cost segregation study before. All I knew is that I started with you guys in the beginning. I also met Sykes and Company at a convention as well. And, I had those conversations from them in the beginning, and I was hesitant if I would go with Sykes and Company because I didn't know if I could afford it or not, or what I should do. But I'm so glad that I took that leap of faith to go ahead and start with them, because they taught me about cost segregation. And Bonnie, you can kind of tell the group what cost segregation does and how it helped me.
Yeah. And so that may be a little deep for the call, but just something to think about. And if anyone wants to reach out and get more information from us from this, we would gladly pass along some information. But because Jarrod built a building from the ground up, we were able to have one of these studies done where they come in and they break out every piece of that building. And so you're able to depreciate some items of that building quicker, instead of the 39 years that you would normally have to for the full cost of that building. So it's just little things like that that I think a lot of people are not aware of. But let's talk about what you brought up about, because we hear that a lot with startups, is they worry not just maybe with their accounting, but other areas that are important. You're trying to save money, you're trying to penny pinch because you're worried about the cash flow, you're worried about growing the pharmacy, and you don't want to spend too much money. But what areas do you see that were important to just, to jump out there, spend that money, and that was important enough to put that out there instead of passing up on?
Yeah, so my mindset, I have people tell me I'm crazy all the time, but my vision is huge. So I didn't want to be that independent pharmacy that was on a side street that no one ever saw, that was in a strip mall, that didn't have a drive-through and didn't have any visibility, and their max capacity would be 250 prescriptions at the most in their life expectancy. I wanted to be that 1,000 script a day store, high visibility, wanted people to be able to walk in, wanted nice fixtures. So if you want to make money, I feel like you have to spend money. And so you have to take that risk, and you have to internalize and look at yourself. Am I going to be able to make it back? And what am I going to do to put forth the effort to make it work? So there was a lot of things that I didn't need to start my pharmacy in the beginning. I didn't need a classroom. I didn't need luxury vinyl tile floors. I didn't need the nicest cabinets or shelves or that kind of thing. But I chose to go with those things. I knew I would have this for a long thing. And many times, I know this sounds a little crazy, but it's my mindset. If you borrow $800,000 and you can't pay it back, you're broke. If you borrow $2 million and you can't pay it back, you're broke. So location is everything for me. So I wanted to be in the center of this town. So the land that I bought was $1 million just alone. But a Walgreens was actually going on this land. So I kind of bought it from underneath them because the guy was in Rotary with my dad. So, Walgreens had already done the study. They already had the site plan. So I knew, man, it must be a pretty good location. So let me get this location. So we have 30,000 cars on one road a day, and we're on a corner. So the other road is 20,000 cars. So we have high visibility. And I say, spend the money. If you're going to step into it, don't put your toe into it. Put your feet into it. Step on solid ground. Get into it. Believe in yourself, and go out and make it happen.
Absolutely. I agree with Jarrod. The location is everything. You have to be able to find the best location in the town that you pick that you possibly can, that gets you the most exposure, that's easy in and out for the customers. You have a lot of elderly people, so they don't like to cross certain, busy streets. So that is such a huge thing that you absolutely have to, if you're gonna do startup, ground up, you absolutely have to find a piece of property that is very, very key to your location. That is the most important, and to be close to places that you can pull from, just like where I was at Kmart, and I was able to pull my customers because they could see my location from Kmart. So that is huge to be able to pull. And then of course we did a lot of, signage and a lot of different things around town to draw people's attention. And we always try to do things that kind of out of the norm to get attention. That way it's always keeping our name in the area.
Okay, we have a couple questions. I was going to shoot some of these out, and either one of you guys can take them. This is from Tremaine. When dealing with wholesalers, is there a way to negotiate upfront off invoice discounts on prescription inventory?
So I think for me, I was lucky in the fact that I joined a buying group, and essentially it was the same buying group that I was in previous when I was at the other independent pharmacy before opening the pharmacy in Florence. So I kind of just rolled into that spot, and we negotiated. So we got a group of independent pharmacists from Georgia and South Carolina together. It's a closed group now, but we all got together. We all put ourselves together. We negotiated between the three big wholesalers, and we ended up getting a pretty good deal due to the fact that, you come to the table with $5 million worth of sales versus $200 million worth of sales. Obviously, you're going to get a better deal with the $200 million because there's a lot more money on the table. So I would say use your ability to leverage your opportunity through a buying group. Do your research on getting in the right buying group and ask around. Sometimes people try to hold that information tight to their chest and I understand why, but you really have to investigate. Look around to who is doing well. If you see people doing well, then obviously they're buying well, and they're so kind of go with who they are with, or maybe schedule an appointment to talk with them or talk with McKesson or that kind of thing. But a buying group's the way to go for sure.
I agree with that as well. Our first year, we were not with a buying group. Once we got out of that first year contract, we actually signed on with a buying group. And that, as my husband says, that was the best business decision we've ever made. So it actually changed to where we actually saw that we were making a profit at that point. So it was definitely a good move. So now I did not have any buying groups that were even looking at us when we first opened, but once we got going just a little bit, we had several people stopping in, and we would listen to them and let them tell us their thing, and then we would go from there. So it's definitely a good idea.
And Jennifer, we have another question. How do you price your prescription inventory? Is there a standard way to determine your usual and customary price?
Honestly, me personally, I just kind of go with what other people in the area, what other places in the area are charging, and I try to be competitive. I kind of see it as, if I charge a little bit less, I'm going to get more prescriptions from that patient that may pay more than, what this one prescription is. So I kind of go, I go on the cheaper side. Plus, we're in kind of a poverty area, so if the person does not have insurance, then I try to be very, very generous to them.
Right. Jarrod, does the wholesaler help with opening inventory RFPs?
Yes. So definitely want to leverage that opportunity. So if you're going with a wholesaler, you're starting inventory. If you think you're gonna go out the gate pretty big, I would say somewhere between, I would say $100,000. If you could get them to give you $100,000 worth of drugs and not have to pay for them for 6 months, you're going to set yourself up in a great position. I tell people that open pharmacies, people call me all the time about opening pharmacies, and I tell them, just hold on. You know, if you can get to month 9, then you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. And month 9 is kind of the place to be. I think month 6 for me was, you know, I could see that light, but most people it's between 6 and 9 to see the light. So definitely leverage your wholesaler to extend you that line of credit for 6 months without paying them back. That will help you out a lot. You need as much working capital as possible because you don't want to be up at night thinking about paying the bills. You want to be up at night thinking, how can I innovate and get people in the store, and how can I get more prescriptions? So rather than worrying about money, make sure you get enough working capital where you can focus your attention on, I have the money, I can use marketing dollars, I can use this, I can do this. What can I do to get people in the store? That needs to be your top of mind process, not, oh my God, can I pay McKesson in 7 days?
Yes, it is always going to cost more than what you planned, no matter what you're doing, and it is always going to take longer than what you planned. So always plan for more is better, because we got, I had pulled so much business from Kmart, and with the insurance lag, we opened in, say, July, and about 4 months in, we were about to go under because the insurances weren't paying us back fast enough, and then we're having to pay out. And we were, thankfully, we went to the bank, and they were not going to give us any more money. And so it was very, very tight for a couple of months. Thankfully, I had a family member that was willing to pull some out of his 401k and different IRAs to help us. But if we had not had that backup and we had not had that, I'm not so sure we could have made it, because it was a scary time there for a little while.
Yep.
I'll give another plug. The Live Oak Bank right there is, when I started, I had enough money. I don't know if they were just trying to get me to pay more interest, but I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that I had enough money in my checking account when I lay down at night that I could sleep well. So I never felt that crunch that I hear people talk about.
Terrible.
And I'm so thankful that I did not feel that crunch. So making sure that you have enough working capital I think is key. You don't want to be focused on money. You want to be focused, like I said earlier, on how you can develop your store, innovate. So I'm thankful for Live Oak for that, for sure.
And something we talked about on the ownership workshop this weekend is I don't think people really realize, when they think about running out of money, they think about maybe not having enough you know, of clients walking through the door, of enough scripts to fill, and so we're running out of money because we can't pay our bills. But you can also run out of money very quickly when you grow quickly, so you can grow yourself to death. Because, you know, and that's where a lot of local banks don't understand the receivable process with the pharmacy, that you can wait 3 and 4 weeks to receive those monies that, you know, the cost of goods sold have gone out the door. You've paid for that inventory, but you haven't been reimbursed for the money yet. So if you're growing really fast, you can run out of money quickly as well. So it's always like Jarrod was saying, you just need to make sure you have that money available. I know with like Live Oak Bank, sometimes the money's there. You don't even have to draw on it. It's just there if you need it for a certain period of time before they really close the loan out. You know, that's a possibility as well, but just something to keep in mind about the growth. Because I know, you know, I don't know about Jennifer's specific situation, but I know with Jarrod, he grew very quickly. So, and usually we see that we either see someone kind of struggle for a year, for 18 months, or we see them take off. And like Jarrod mentioned, in that 6 month, 9 months time frame, they just go from here to here. And that's where that lack of cash flow can happen.
Yes.
And just to piggyback off of what Bonnie just said with that 18-month period, Jennifer, what are some things that you did to become profitable within the 18 months or in that period of time?
I definitely wanted to make sure that I had a pharmacy to pull business from. And I worked at Kmart right up until the week before I opened this pharmacy. So I wanted to make sure that I had business to start immediately. And I would advise that if anyone is able to do that, to either work at a Walgreens or a Rite Aid, a CVS, a Kroger, if you can stay there with your patients almost right and then kind of put a little bug in their ear, it's huge. And that's what I tried to do. I stayed there, and then as soon as we made the decision, we opened this. We put a big sign with my picture on the outside of Kmart in the back of the truck, so it was movable, and so that way everyone knew I was here, and we were just immediately bringing business in. And I would actually be afraid to start a pharmacy without knowing that you're for sure going to have quite a bit of business that you're going to pull with you from somewhere. Unlike Jarrod just started kind of straight up in his town, but I wanted to make sure that we were going to have people that was going to follow me. So
Right.
Yeah,
What about
Jennifer,
you?
I would tell you, I had a list. I might not have had personal connections, and I do believe the most successful pharmacies are pharmacies where maybe you worked in a CVS across the street and you worked there for 3 or 4 years, and you had really connected, engaged with those patients, and they loved you, and go across the street and build a store. I think that's genius for sure. For me, I just got a notebook and I started writing down everybody possible, maybe that I went to church with, that played sports with, anything like that. If I knew them or knew their, I say mom and them over here in South Carolina, if I knew anybody, I would write their name down and I would give them a personal call. And so I had a list going. I had about 200 people on that list. And did all of them transfer? No, not at all, because people don't transfer quickly. Another key thing that I did when I opened the store is I put on some tennis shoes and shorts and a polo shirt, and I went door to door knocking in neighborhoods. And would I suggest that in every neighborhood? No, I wouldn't. But in this neighborhood, I had a koozie and a door hanger, and I would go to those doors and I would knock on the door. If the patient was there, I would say, "Hey, I'm Jarrod Tippins. I just opened the pharmacy on the corner of Hoffmeyer and Beltline. We're a full service pharmacy." And I would just give that spiel. So that person, a lot of those people did not come to begin with, but then Kmart closed down, and all those patients said, "I remember you coming to my door." And that was impressionable upon me, is because they probably wouldn't remember that postcard that came in the mail, because I did that too. But they remember me showing up in my tennis shoes and shorts and a polo shirt with a koozie and a door hanger with a $20 off OTC transferring. So when Kmart closed down, those people remembered me. I was top of mind. When Rite Aid, which is less than a mile away from me, when they closed down, those people came too. So it was like God aligning everything for me with those stores closing. But essentially, you have to be top of mind in people's thought process. So when people get mad at CVS, what are they thinking? They're thinking about the pharmacy on the corner. So if their mother's having trouble getting their prescriptions, like, we're going to transfer everything to the pharmacy. So we see that, and it keeps getting busier and busier. My technician said it's going to get busier, because I'm always wanting more and more and more. They're like, every day we're seeing transfers come in. Somebody got upset from this chain store, that kind of thing. So if you can ever get those people in the door, and you can be top of mind, those people will remember you. So that was a big thing for me. People remembering me, knocking on that door, because how many people knock on your door this day and time? Not many. So you knocking on the door and you telling who you are and you engage them with that person on a very personal level, they will remember you.
How about mistakes that you made during this process? Anything you guys want to share to help some others on the call? Maybe some things you would have done differently?
You want to go first, Jennifer?
What would I have done differently? Probably I would have built bigger because we always expand. We continue to expand. Our over-the-counter section, I would have made that a lot smaller. At first, we had it big, and it looked very, very nice when you walked in, and it was a new store. Everything looked very nice, but we didn't sell that much over-the-counter stuff. So I just had everything sitting out there. It was expiring, driving me crazy, driving the techs crazy, pulling it off the shelves. So we condensed that down and tried to do other things to get our name into the community. We were the first ones in the state of Kentucky to do point of care service, where we did testing for strep and flu. So the first day that we did it, my husband got on the phone. He called all the news companies around Kentucky, and he called all the newspapers, and they're all showing up, and it was just pre-advertising that we were the first pharmacy in Kentucky that could test you for the flu or the strep, and we were the first ones to be able to, and we could initiate a prescription if you tested positive. So it was huge to actually get our name out there, and it kind of went all over the state. So just doing little things, that was a little thing. It was time consuming, but it was huge just to get our name out. So if you could find any little thing to do to get your name out, that is huge.
I'm like Jennifer, so a few things. So I had a pretty smooth process. I'm grateful for that, but it came with planning for sure. One thing is I would have added another drive-through. So I have 2 drive-throughs located on the building. And essentially I'm getting ready to add on, we're adding 4,000 square feet. And so we'll add another drive-through as well. So we have a ton of transactions through the drive-through every day. People love the ease of the drive-through. Over-the-counter stuff in the beginning, I had a big over-the-counter as well, and I still do. In the beginning, I didn't sell that much, and stuff was expiring like Jennifer because it wasn't as busy. But now that we have more people, more traffic, it does okay. When people walk in, I don't want it to look like we're shutting down. I want it to look like we're thriving and that we're surviving well. So we have a nice over-the-counter selection, and in the beginning, I just took that loss of things expiring and, just got rid of it. But I didn't want people to think that we were going out of business. And as I talked to Jennifer earlier, they've diversified their over-the-counter section, and it's been really good for her as well. But I just want people to take heed that you shouldn't just have one 4-foot section in your over-the-counter section, because people don't think you're legit. So it's like if you're buying a car from the Toyota place that has 300 cars on the lot or 25 Toyota cars on the lot, you think that the people that's got 300 cars know what they're doing more so than the people that have 25, even though the people with 25 might have more knowledge and have better customer service. But psychologically, you're thinking that the people with 300 know what they're doing better and they got it going on. So really keep that in mind, that your presence and your appearance and how you present yourself is what people are looking at.
Yeah. And so I have to ask, from a CPA and accountant, would you guys have done anything different on that front when you were first starting up? How you handled your accounting, your tax, that sort of thing?
I would have 100%. We should have just went with Sykes and Company right off the bat, because we had seen you all at different, trade shows and at the ownership workshop. We did not make the decision because we thought we couldn't afford it. And we didn't even call to find out, how much it was going to be. We just assumed we couldn't afford it. So we went with the local accountant, and it was bad. Thankfully, we switched over to Sykes about 2 years ago, and they have helped pull us out of it. But again, it's just the fact that Sykes and Company knows pharmacy. That accountant did not know pharmacy. So she didn't know how she could help me, when I did start to grow. So I would say all those people that you learn about at NCPA and you kind of look back at, you look at them and you're like, oh, that's way too expensive for me. Just factor that into your startup cost, honestly,
Right.
because I would have loved to have went with Sykes and Company right off the bat, just like Pharmacist Mutual. I looked into them in the beginning as far as for insurances and all of that, but I didn't. I thought they're more expensive than if I go local. So I went local for a couple of years and then just realized that they know pharmacy. It may be a little more expensive, but it's the way to go because they know pharmacy and they handle everything for you. So as far as I know it seems expensive if you're looking from the outside, but it makes a huge difference for your business to have people behind you that knows what you're doing.
Thank you.
So I met Sykes and Company at a trade show, like I said before, and we've been walking hand in hand since day one. Actually, a few months before day one, and man, I wouldn't change that for anything. Due to the fact that the money that you pay them, they save you that money plus more than that, because they have the knowledge to kind of leverage opportunities that you as an individual would never know of if you were just out there on your own. I love to be able to, call Caroline, and she answers the phone every time I call, and maybe it's just 2 minutes, but I can just run it by. And maybe I'm spoiled compared to other people, but I feel like that she's always there, and I can call her if it's the simplest thing like, Caroline, did I already pay this bill? It came again. I'm not sure. She's like, I'm gonna text you in just a minute and let you know. And so I love that. I love the fact that I don't have to spend a lot of time on the back end. I don't really love that part. So I can just, scan my bills in, send it over to bill.com, and to those guys, it's easy, approved, and we just keep it moving. So they made my life from that aspect very, very easy, and that's what I love.
All right, Megan, let's hit this last question.
Let's see. If you were going to give any specific advice to someone looking for a startup, so we kind of already touched on that, didn't we? Do either one of you have anything additional you to
Closing
give?
advice.
Yeah, closing advice for someone who might be considering a startup?
I think security is very important. Jarrod and I were talking about that earlier. We both have great security cameras that we can view what's going on at the pharmacy if we're not in the building, or if there's anything at all that goes wrong, we can narrow down exactly, like he said in his drive-through, he has a camera where you can actually see inside the car and see the patient, and then you got a camera where you can see the license plate on the back end of the car. That is huge to have that. And then also too, the Ring doorbell. I know it's only like $150, $200. That is huge. We put that on our back door, which is a key location where someone may try to break in. And even though we have, awesome pull down gates and all that sort of stuff, we put that Ring doorbell on the back, and we actually, and it's great because it rings straight into my phone. If it detects any motion, whoever's on the outside of it does not, they do not see you or hear you if you don't want them to. And if it detects motion, it'll ring through to my phone. I pull it up and I can see who's out there right then. Crazy enough, my husband actually caught some guys that were from out of state trying to break into the back of our pharmacy one night because of that. So
wow.
Yeah, for its money, it is way worth it. So I would absolutely recommend. Security is huge.
What about you, Jarrod? Any closing advice?
Yeah, closing advice. So oftentimes when I got on webinars or went to conventions, I would get overwhelmed with all the information. I was like, man, I can't do this. This is crazy. Like, it's too scary for me. That kind of, although I'm not really scared of much. But so I want to tell people, don't let people tell you can't do it. Like, this has transformed my life, not only being involved in the community, but financially in every way. If you don't want to be that pharmacist that gets up every morning and goes to CVS and those techs aren't there, or that phone's ringing off the hook, or you don't have that help that you need. This gives you so much autonomy. It might not be easy for the first 18 months, a year, but I promise you, if you put in the work and you get involved in your community, that it'll be well worth it. So don't take all this information as scary information. Take this information to build upon, make it a stepping stone to a bright future for yourself. Because I can tell you, if you get in the right scenario, right situation, you will be very successful, and you'll be very thankful that you did.
Okay, guys,
Look
we have
at
a
the
few
big
quick
picture.
questions. Thank you, Jennifer. We have a few quick questions before we have to jump off. So, how long did it take for you to open the doors once you received your funds from the bank or the loan?
Yeah, for me, it was about, do you remember, Bonnie? It was less than a year. I had everything planned out. It was very strategic because I knew that I had to get my insurance contract, and I knew when the building was complete that I had to be able to start business. I needed to start business ASAP. Once those drugs got on the shelf, I had 6 months to pay back that beginning inventory. I had, I think it was a grace period with Live Oak Bank before I had to start paying. It was 6 months as well. So I had 6 months to really make things happen. And so that less than a year for me from when we first started the process.
We were the same. We went to the ownership workshop, I think, in February. We started looking for property. I immediately started working on my business plan, started going to the banks. We found the piece of property. We probably started building about 6-7 months later, and we were probably open in about another 6 months. So we really tried to put, it was within a year, but we put a move on it. We were here day and night for the entire year. After I got off from Kmart, after my husband got off from his job, we were here on, Saturdays, Sundays, always. And we did a lot of stuff ourselves to try to save money. And we also, I didn't think about touching on this earlier, but we did try a trial run probably for about 2 years before we opened up to totally live off of his salary. So we lived very modestly. We didn't, buy anything, any fancy cars or anything like that. And we just absolutely lived off of his salary and saved all of my money. So we would have a down payment to put in, and just to make sure that we could do it. And I did not pay myself until Sykes and Company made me.
We didn't make you. That is something the IRS wants you to do.
Yeah.
But no, and it was for the best. But I didn't know any better, and so I thought that was for the best at the time.
That's the point, right? That's what you're after. Obviously, you want to get paid.
Right.
You're not doing it for fun. And I think you brought up a good point too, is just to make sure those contracts, that's so important, to make sure those are in place before you're opening the doors too. You don't want to be turning away patients. We see some startups struggle with that. That can be very detrimental. One other question, are wholesaler rebate structures negotiable or only based on metrics?
So again, I didn't really research that well because we formed our own buying group with a lot of other independents. So I don't really know the answer to that question. Unfortunately, I can't give you great, but I think everything's negotiable, right? So start high and then work your way down. That would be my advice for that.
I would honestly say no. I don't think it is negotiable, because we actually talked to a couple of drug companies and buying groups that were basically sitting there saying, we'll do whatever you want, and they're telling my husband that, and I'm like, I don't trust them, and then we have buying groups that say, this is what everyone across the board gets if they have this much. And so, and it wasn't negotiable as far as, when we were dealing with them. It kind of seemed like, or if it was, I felt like they were kind of full of it, and I didn't trust them, to be honest.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, we're getting close to 2 o'clock, so we want to thank Jarrod and Jennifer for their time today. You guys have been great. You guys have very successful pharmacies. You're doing an awesome job, and we really appreciate your time to share with some of these that are people that are on this webinar looking to possibly do the same. So, and as far as Sykes and Company, we just want to let you know that we'll be willing to speak with any of you that have looking at a possible purchase or a startup. You can go on our website at the top of the page and schedule a time to meet with us to discuss that. Also, we have lots of videos. We actually have a startup series on our website, a YouTube channel with endless amounts of videos that you could probably entertain yourself with for months on end. We tell people they can watch those at night if they're having trouble sleeping. There's lots of subjects there that many of us here at Sykes and Company have put together. So definitely check those out. And with that, I think we'll close it out for today. Thank you guys. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great day.